Hello, good morning. I am Cintia Ramirez. Th- Thanks for being with us. Yesterday, during the first dialogue sessions, we started to see the most urgent topics. We spoke about non-diseases, and everything is focused on reproductive health, but this is not the only important topic. How women have experienced non-communicable diseases, it has received little attention. This is why it is important to speak about the economic and health aspect of these diseases from the gender perspective, produce data, and to be sensitive to gender. In order to achieve this, yesterday, the alliance between the National Institute of Public Health and the George Institute of Global Health of Australia in a special project to analyze the economic and health impacts of non-communicable diseases in Mexican women. We also spoke about mental health, which is something to be addressed, and technology can and will be a great ally. And we closed yesterday with a panel on efficiencies and innovation of cancer care, where analysts spoke about how important it is not to forget that the focal point is patients. And for this to be actually effective, we need to improve the way in which health systems allow us to navigate. We also spoke about the importance of retaking the National Cancer Registry, because only with data we will be able to make decisions. And last but not least, we spoke about the importance of bringing artificial intelligence and other technologies in diagnosis. And now, we should also say that yesterday we had some audio problems, and we are sure the remote experience was not the best. We apologize. The production team has been working to resolve those issues. We trust today we will not have problems, and you will be able to enjoy the two panels we're going to have for today. Without further ado, I will give the floor to Mayra Perez, the Executive Director of the Development Unit and Bioprocess Research at the National Polytechnical Institute. She will be in charge of the first panel. Thanks for being with us, and please enjoy. Hello, good morning. It is my pleasure to be with you today, this second day of this Innovation Week 2022. I am Dr. Mayra Perez, and to me it is a big honor and a pleasure to be here today with you in charge of the coordination of this session that I believe is going to bring great results, great examples, and several engines in order to keep promoting clinical research in our country. As you know, the name of this session is The New Trends and the Successful Cases in the Promotion of Clinical Research and the Fostering of this Activity. And in this session, we have three personalities and experts in this area. And if I may, I will introduce them and I will quickly present them and give you their resume before the actual presentations. And before we listen to them, we first have Lara Reyes. She has experience in human genetics, in health economics, and personalized medicine. She has worked with health authorities for more than 8 years as an assessor of clinical trials, an inspector of good clinical practice at the Swiss Medic, which is the equivalent to the Mexican regulatory agency. In EMA, she was in the specialized discipline unit, working in centralized projects in clinical pharmacology. She joined Roche in 2019, where she is their global regulatory leader in the innovation of clinical trials and the digital health programs today. And she is working in order to increase the adoption and the acceptance of innovative methods in the programs for the drug development in Roche. And to achieve internal acceptance, she represents Roche in the clinical research group of experts at the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industry. And she includes the innovative clinical trials. Thanks, Lara, for being with us. Good morning and good afternoon. Susana Baldini. Dr. Susana Baldini, she is a physician from the Buenos Aires University. Her resume includes family medicine, clinical research and monitoring, as well as a postgraduate course in strategic management at the Belgrano University. Today, she performs as a medical director for KM, which is the Argentinian Chamber of Medicinal Specializations. She is a professor at the university. She has more than 25 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry in companies such as Merck and Ferry in Argentina, in Denmark, and the United States, and she has given consultants in LATAM in areas of scientific teams. Thanks, Dr. Susana, for being here with us. It is our pleasure. And last but not least, Fernando Cruz. He joined Novartis Group as a director of corporate matters. Fernando, he is an economy, and he has a specialization, a degree in economics from ITESM, and he studied in the Monterrey campus, and he has a master's in administration, an MBA by the business school. He has more than 60 years of experience, and he has been in different positions in the public sector. Positions such as the Subdirector of Cooperation Trust for Europe and Latin America at the National Bank of Foreign Trade, Bancomext, and he has been also the National Director of the Entrepreneurial Center Mexico, the European Union, and Executive Director for International Cooperation in ProMexico. From those positions, he has promoted the strategic agenda for different industries to strengthen competitiveness abroad. He has also participated in the identification and design of trade promotion, investment, and the comprehensive support program to SMEs. And the A1 program, AIMBIS 3, with a scope and presence in more than 40 countries, as well as other Mexican competitiveness programs. In the private sector, he has practiced corporate matters in different industrial sectors. Thanks to the three of you. Thanks, Fernando, Susana, and Dr. Lara. Without further ado, we're going to start with their presentations. And the order, as we said before, first Lara, and then we're going to listen to Susana, and at the end, we're going to hear the gentleman who is with us today. And then we're going to have the question and answer period. Please go ahead, Lara. Thanks, and I will share my screen. Good. Thanks a lot for the invitation to speak today. I apologize if I use some words in English. It is my pleasure to speak about the evolution in the methods and in the studies and clinical trials. And I represent, as Dr. Mayra, I represent the FTA Innovative Trials Group and the work that has been developed by them in recent years. It is my pleasure to represent them in this panel. I will be speaking about the different types of approaches and innovative designs, and above all, I will give you an important message. That is, with these new types of design of clinical trials, we want to have scientific evidence, very strong scientific evidence. We do not want to compromise the integrity of the data and the safety of the patients. So all the innovations I will be presenting, we always take these three elements in mind when we design and when we carry out clinical trials, the evidence, integrity of the data. And as you can see in this slide, the type of innovation is making progress with science and with the different methods and approaches and different levels of compliance. I will be speaking about the different types of innovation, as you can see here, the adaptative studies, master studies. I will be speaking about the use of external controls and other examples. The first example that I want to share with you has to do with the use of biomarkers in clinical trials, and this is a very oncology-centered example. It also focuses on personalized medicine studies, and thanks to the progress in science and in medicine, this is what we can do today. Here we have two examples of the use of biomarkers. In the first example, to the left side of this slide, you see how in the study, in the trial, only positive biomarker patients are included and the negative ones are excluded, taken out of the trial. Depending on the randomization, they will be treated differently, depending on the result of the marker. Then we have to the right another type of a study where biomarkers are used. And here we have randomized patients depending on the biomarker to one or to another treatment or to control approaches where the treatments are given regardless of the biomarker. In these studies, we evaluate the benefit for patients when treating them with personalized medicine depending on the biomarker. Another type of innovation that I said at the beginning are the adaptative studies. We can see the different parts of the study, as you can see here. I will be speaking about each one of those cases. What is important is that adaptation should be predefined in the trial protocol, and it will be adapted based on the data that has been collected at the beginning of the study, to make a decision to determine if adaptation is needed, the predefined adaptation. What can we adapt? We can adapt different aspects, the randomization process to adapt the number of patients in one or in another arm, how this is going to be done. We can adapt the dosages to then come to stage 3 with more information about the different dosages and earlier studies. We can also adapt. We can open and close new arms depending on the efficacy data. And with this, we will not treat patients with non-effective treatments. Or if we see efficacy, we can take all this data quicker to the health authorities for approval purposes. We can also adapt the number of patients in the trial depending on the data we get, and the statistical approaches which are used. And another very important example during the COVID pandemic are the seamless studies. We have one exploratory aspect and the confirmative stage in stage 2 and the stage 3 in the same protocol, and we can make faster progress with the molecules that will show a stage 2 early efficacy and to have faster confirmatory results. And the adaptive enrichment designs, what I have already said about the biomarkers. Another type of innovative study is the master protocol trials, where the common characteristic of this trial is to have a protocol with different sub-studies or cohorts, and each one of those sub-studies will address a different drug or a different indication. There are different categories of the master protocol studies. If you want to learn more, I recommend you to see a paper by Espia that is speaking about this positive low stage trial. In this basket studies, we see a biomarker, again in oncology, with a treatment for that personalized biomarker, and patients can be joined and included. And in the umbrella study, there is a tumor location with different biomarkers, the specific personalized treatment for each one of the biomarkers. We have different cohorts and arms to study the different biomarkers. In this platform study, we have a mix where we can have different directions, indications, and different treatments, always responding to the same objective, scientific objective, and always asking the same scientific question. Here we have examples of oncology, but we're we're starting to see the application of these studies beyond oncology. I do not want you to believe that these are examples just of oncology. This is also very useful in other medical conditions. Here we have the use of historical controls. It also offers many opportunities to reduce studies, controls, and in order to have faster data. And what we do here is to use data from other completed clinical trials and data from the real-world data from the clinical practice that we obtain from patients. Something that is very important is to use the correct statistical approaches and methods and to compare the characteristics of the external study population with the study population in order to make sure those data can be compared. And then depending on how we use the external controls, we have different degrees. As you can see here in the randomized control where no external controls are used. And here we have the use of external control, increasing the internal control of the population to respond to the different questions of the study. Or in the lower portion of the slide, a study where we can completely compare with an external control. Treatment cohort, an active treatment cohort. So depending on the level and the types of data for the different directions, we can use it differently to respond to the scientific question. Another type of a study that has been commonly seen in the pandemic, something that has had a very important impact, is the type of a study with decentralized elements. What do we want to achieve here? We want to achieve what we saw yesterday, to have the centricity, to have the patient right at the center. When we design these studies, how can we bring the study closer to the patient, where they live? How can we use the local facilities, and how can we facilitate the participation of the patient in the study? And we do this making some local visits. We go to the home of the medicine with telemedicine, video conferences, using global nursing, or nurses who can go home to the home of the patient to pay some visits, or using the local facilities, as I said, with local pharmaceutical labs or companies or local laboratories, and the use of digital technologies where it is possible to assess the efficacy, security, safety, and treatment through different digital technologies, different applications to do the follow-up of the patient and to then be able to determine the efficacy of the treatment. I have presented everything very fast, but I will love to answer your questions after the panel. We have the challenges, depending on the type of a study, the different challenges, scientific challenges, for example, how to make sure data are complete while we do the adaptation of the study, or how can we use this external control, how the external population compares to the internal population, and how we select the correct comparison in order to answer the scientific question. From the operative or operational perspective, we have some challenges because we need to actually plan everything at the beginning of the study to make sure everything is okay. All this has to be planned, all the adaptations. If there is no good planning, then operationally it will be more complicated to make it happen. With the regulators, we talk to the European agency, with the US agency, and we also talk with other authorities about the acceptance of these trials, and we set the impact when the methodology is well designed and when it helps us answer the scientific question. And we also do pilot projects and workshops and all these conferences to analyze and discuss this, and we also take it to other regions. As I said at the beginning, it is always very important to have in mind the safety of the patient, the integrity of data, and to have robust scientific evidence from these studies, from these trials. We explore the different approaches to make the best decisions in the development of medicines in the earliest possible time, in the most effective way. But we still need to have discussions with all the stakeholders who are involved in this topic so that we can all make progress to prioritize education on these new types of clinical trials and to make sure this is acceptable for regulators as well as for the payers. And with this, Mayra, this is the end of my presentation. Thanks, Lada. Very interesting. Many questions that we're going to leave for the end. And now we're going to listen to Dr. Susana. Would you please take the floor over, Susana? You are in mute, Susana. Yes, I will share my screen. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Well, the idea is to speak about the experience we had in Argentina with clinical research. Can you hear me okay? Great. This is just for you to know the context. KM is a pioneer Latin American chamber in the country. Medicinal treatments. It started in 1995. We are kind of old, and soon we're going to be celebrating 1 more year. And I would like to tell you what we have as a special partner in the chamber, which is CAOIC. CAOIC, which is the Chamber of Clinical Research Organization. And what we have, the advantage is that when we work together, we always represent 90% of clinical research in the country. 90% of the investment made in clinical research in the country comes from CAOIC and from KM. So with them, we have seen that we are allies to address the clinical research discussion topics. And here, this is just a short summary. When we speak about what we produce, as in terms of research, we see the number of protocols that have been submitted. This is a report by the IMSIT, the Minister of Science and Technology, and it does contributions and investment in research and development in every sector. But here we have a special clinical research report because we were able to work with them in what is characteristic, the commonality of the clinical trial and research that is different from other sectors. In our case, in 2020, we saw an increase in the number of protocols. And speaking about investment in millions of pesos, this is corrected, 19,266. And if we compare the last 4 years, almost 75% increase. And it is 20 times more compared to other research and development activities, and the participation or market share by other sectors in clinical research has increased from 19 to 20. The last report, we increased by 3.5 points. And here we see how it is reversely correlated during the MAT evaluation time, which is the national authority, and it matches some data that we saw in Spain. And what we see here is that 40% of the investment made, this 19,266 million pesos, are given to a health institution. This is an investment, and the remaining 60%, it is staff, imports, tariffs and taxes and operational expenses. 40% goes to a health institution. And when we do the calculations for every percentile point that we have in one jurisdiction, 77 million pesos are added to the financial item of that jurisdiction. Speaking about the direct investment in health institutions, so we can tell it is a productive activity. And since this is financeable, 90% of the external financing, 11 times more than in other sectors, it is an service exports activity. On this regard, in our country, we Undersecretary of the Knowledge Secretary that depends on the Productive Development Ministry, because since services are exported, genuine currency is produced. And if we compare to other research and development sectors, such as the cedars and chemicals, we see that between these two, we contribute with 85% of the external financing. In countries such as ours, something that is vitally important because of this generation of dollars. You do not know that in Argentina there is a very specific history. But this is something that is very useful of why we promote clinical research. Here we have 21 of all the protocols submitted, and the math time, we got this record number in recent years, 210 protocols in the last decade. The highest number of protocols submitted in 21, so it is still growing post-pandemic, and we implemented, in order to follow these metrics, we installed a platform, a centralized platform where KM and KOE can compile the information and all this representative in order to communicate it externally. We did it before, but without this technology. And the inflection point of this increase was a provision and an IT platform for evaluation implemented by the National Regulatory Authority. So after that provision, where the protocol evaluation times are committed and the implementation of a platform. In the past, it was on paper, and with this IT platform, now everything is submitted digitally, and they produce information, digital information, and we see that all these improvements were possible. Now we always try to communicate. When we talk to the different jurisdictions, we are a federal country, and each science and health jurisdiction, considering all the characteristics taken into consideration when choosing a center and to diffuse the information, it is something international, and we choose one arm, the characteristics of the patients, of the excellent centers, and the competitiveness that is needed in order to achieve this. In centers, we do not only speak about what is difficult, but also human resources, infrastructure, time, and data of quality. And the result should be a benefit for the health system in terms of improvement of the medical practice, the clinical history, care of patients, and for us, speaking about competitiveness, a benefit in economy, in access to innovation, and in patient treatment standards. This is why our message is that we are still seeing, as all these years elapse, we see what we need to treat, with whom, at what time. So the Ministry of Health, it does a very important activity for the ministry, but actually it is different. The topic we need to address with the Ministry of Health compared to the Ministry of Production, radically medicine, that is doing clinical and pharmacological research for registration purposes, has nothing to do with the basic and transnational research. So we need to divide it with different sectors of government, because these are topics which are separated with separate needs. The economy of knowledge, this has also been a strategic ally, because we find currency generation and competitiveness, of course, helps the National Regulatory Authority, the different ethics committees with their different functions and roles and contributions they can do in terms of harmonization or guidelines, a chancellor's office outside for promotion purposes, and then what we try to promote is that public registries, we want them to be more and more friendly and transparent. This is our experience, and this is what I wanted to share with you in these minutes, and thank you very much. Thanks, Susana. Next, we will have Fernando. Yes. Can you hear me okay? Yes, we perfectly hear you, Fernando. Thank you very much. Please go ahead. It is my pleasure to be in this panel. Thank you very much for the invitation and to be here with these very talented women. As far as I know, production has my presentation. Would you please share my presentation? And as a preamble, the perspective that I will take is going to be a more practical approach. I believe the two first presentations were very useful in order to now have the perspective how important Novartis clinical trials are. In Novartis, we know that Mexico has ideal conditions to become a research hub for clinical trials and a reference point, with, of course, with the adequate regulatory framework, with a healthy ecosystem for innovation so that we can have more innovation. for clinical research in pharmaceutical companies. If you please help me with the first slides. Will you please tell me if we have the slides? Yes, we do have them. We only need to share the screen. I do not see. I am being told that you are sharing, but I do not see them. Thank you very much. I only would like to give you some perspective of who we are in Novartis. In Novartis, we are a company operating in 155 countries where we touch almost 1 billion patients every year, 66 million of them through our access programs and vulnerable living conditions. The next one, please. And in Novartis, as well as all the other companies which are predominantly doing innovation, we operate in a world where healthcare is transforming significantly, where we can see, as you can see there, where we can see an innovation, an important innovation machine. There is a market, digital health market, that is growing on a yearly basis. We estimate $235 billion is the estimated growth rate in the future in the digital health market. We also have an increase in the life expectation of the population. It will increase in the years to come, and in the case of Mexico, it is estimated that life expectancy, according to CEPAL, is going to be around 80, and sometimes in the year 2050, even a longer life. And if we add this to the epidemiological transition and the demographic situation of Mexico, we have an important challenge in order to bring more innovation to Mexico, and this is precisely why it is so pertinent to implement public policies that would allow us to bring more clinical trials to Mexico. And last but not least, an increase in health expenditure, what we see worldwide, what is dedicated to the chronic and degenerative diseases. In the case of Mexico, as we all know, there is a sub-investment in health. Mexico invests a little bit more than 5% of the GDP in health, and 50% of this, or even more than 50%, is out of the pocket expense. This is a challenge for everyone in order to bring innovation and to do it in a financially sustainable way for the system. The next one, please. In Novartis, we are predominantly, as I already told you, an innovation and data science company. We invest almost 20% of our return, global return on research and development, and this is why we have the robust pipelines of the industry with regulatory important approvals in 26 in 2020, 16 in 2021, and we are positioned as a company that is bringing more innovation. The next one, please. And this is just to share some data with you about the clinical trials. Maybe some of you already know these numbers. 2/3. This is the increase in the life expectancy, and it is a result thanks to the progress in science. In other words, what we do as pharmaceutical companies in clinical trials, 293 drugs are the ones approved by regulatory agencies worldwide, reference organizations. In other words, there is an important innovation to address the health challenges we have, and from 8 to up to 12 years, this is the time it takes the companies to develop a new molecule or therapy. Now that we're speaking about cell therapies, and this is important because the likelihood of success is 1 out of every 10,000. For every 10,000 molecules that start in the earliest stage of the preclinical trials, only one is going to come to the market. And this is a process that requires important investment, up to $2.6 billion. $2.6 billion. This is what is necessary in order to develop a new molecule. So we are facing a scenario where there is complexity that results from knowledge, from high levels of knowledge available today to address the different diseases. And from this perspective, the discovery of new therapies and molecules is more difficult, but there is also a speeding up process in clinical trials as a result of technology after the application of artificial intelligence algorithms that accelerate the discovery process. And this is a result of the COVID-19 as well. The society is expecting more reduced processes for the discovery of new therapies, and this is what we saw for COVID vaccines and treatment. And the last slide is how do we do? How does it look like in the field? How can we capture the opportunity, tap the opportunity, and make Mexico become a reference country in terms of research? This is our experience, very recent experience, and we are trying to resolve what seems to be a false paradox, speaking about the public and private collaboration, because we see it as one of the pathways, the only one pathway that would allow us to resolve, as I said before, financial sustainability in health systems. So what we did was to look for where do we have the same agendas. We know that we have more commonalities instead of different things. And there you see the economic recovery plan presented by the Mexican government through the Ministry of Economy based on 4 strategic pillars, as you can see. I will speak about the second one, which is the promotion and facilitation of investment. Because with this economic recovery plan, we talked to the Mexican government about the collaborative instrument signing. We call it MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, based on the Sustainable Development Agenda in objective number 3 that has to do with health, specifically the reduction of mortality because of chronic and degenerative diseases. So we took health not from the clinical and scientific perspective. From this perspective, that happens to be abstract, but we're speaking about the economy of health. Economy of health as a strategic sector for the country that contributes with 5.5% of the GDP, that is close to other sectors that traditionally are known as a strategic ones, such as wholesale and construction. And we believe that with this common understanding, it is going to be easier to speak about the pertinence of doing more research in Mexico. So what we did was to work in very material initiatives, very specific initiatives, and to go beyond the proof of concept in order to become an ally of the Mexican government in this economic recovery, and specifically bringing more innovation. So we committed $50 million for clinical research in Mexico. As you can see there, we have also made an important effort. We have worked with Will4 in order to measure the contribution of Novartis to the GDP of Mexico. Last year, we had a contribution of almost $400 million to the GDP of Mexico, and 10% of that contribution comes precisely from our research activities and development activities and clinical trials. How does this look like? In a typical year before the pandemic, in average, we had more or less 70 clinical trials in Mexico. There was a disruption. Last year, 51 clinical trials with 121 recruited patients in Mexico. Is that too much or is that too little? Well, we believe these are the steps in the right direction, but of course there is a long way to go in order to keep bringing innovation to Mexico in a sustainable manner, and there are many things we need to do with the authority. This is only one example. We want this to be the roadmap so that more companies join the effort, and together we can do more research in Mexico. And what you see there, these are very clear examples of clinical trials with great results, where we have included patients in an accelerated time with very positive results, and with COVID-19 that we brought a global study to Mexico together with the authority. I will stop here so that I can restart, so that we can start the Q&A. Thanks, Fernando. I believe these 3 presentations, I believe, based on your opinion, I believe there is a convergence point after listening to the 3 presentations. Innovation, acceleration of the approval of clinical trials, this increase of Argentina, and in your case, Fernando, clinical investment, the convergence point in the protocols. So, I would like to ask you, Lada, am I right? Lada. It is first Lada. And then I see your last name. From your perspective, speaking about the clinical innovation, which is to you the biggest challenge in this regulatory agency in the innovation of clinical trials, speaking about the biomarkers, these accelerated designs, the controls, to you, which is the main challenge with the regulatory agencies. Thanks, Mayra. I used to review these studies in the Switzerland agency. It was evaluating the protocols. So I can tell you firsthand how complex it is to evaluate complex protocols such as master studies. These are very long protocols with different clinical objectives and with different molecules. And in this part of the evaluation, we always see the safety, the quality of the molecule, and efficacy information for the development stage, so that we can determine if the study is possible. So one of the complexities is the evaluation of the protocols. And for that, those aspects of education, and I will share examples in Europe about education of ethical committees so that they can expedite the review of complex protocols, for example, and regulating agencies working together, all the studies by the agencies, and to attend trainings together so that there is training on the new types of designs, what to be assessed, so that we can make sure patients are safe, because this is what is mostly seen. So a very important point is training, education. Another important point is communications, clearly. On the pharmaceutical side, we need to explain why the reason for those clinical trials, why the different designs were used, and open communications with groups of patients, with groups of researchers, to have this open dialogue on the need to make progress with the clinical trials and why we are adding. I hope complexity will take us to simplicity. We're speaking about complex studies, but with all this, we want to be more effective, and in the future, we hope we can reach simplicity. So I hope this, you have seen some of the examples of simplicity and how important communications and education are. Thanks, Lara. Susana, I would like to ask you, because what is something very, very evident is how the acceleration of the authorization of the protocols, this is something we saw in your charts. The number of approvals is directly related to investment and to research. What did Argentina do in order to accelerate, to expedite these evaluations without jeopardizing the safety of the individual? Which are going to be your tips? What would be these strategic areas that were improved? And I also would like to ask you if these studies are, what type of stage? Is it a stage 2 or a stage 3? And what is the percentage of clinical trials in a stage 1 that you develop? I will start with the second part of your question. And we have late and early, 35% early, and the remaining is a stage 3. This is our classification. We go from the lowest. If it is 1 or 2 stage, it is going to be early. And if it is 2, 3, it is going to be also seen as early. In the case of adaptive, we believe that the biggest influence, as we saw in 2017, the implementation of a provision where LAMAT made a commitment to the Times to give an answer to the different types of protocols, and a platform was also implemented in the past. Instead of taking every question In the past, before it was necessary to bring papers and to then give those papers to other departments for review purposes. It is not happening. Now everything is electronic information, and the type of information was done electronically as well. Speaking about the evaluation of drugs and registrations. So once we have this type of IT evaluation, the faster it works faster, and trainings were given together with EMA, with a good relationship with the National Health Authority, and this is why evaluators are better trained. This is why we see that it is now taking less time. In 21, there was a slight increase, but in terms of time, the time is doing very well. In fact, the average is close to the mean, so the time dispersion time rate is less. It is this time is more reproducible. This is something very important because sometimes 20 days and then 100 days, it is useless. It is better to have 40 days, but to always make it 40 days. The reliability of the process. So for us, this was the convergence where times are committed, the times of the platform, and then during the pandemic. In fact, the COVID protocols had an average of around 20 days for approval purposes. And all this happened with a committed effort by the staff, by the authorities. Questions were asked at any point in time. We were working in bulk with an absolute commitment to safety of patients in order to bring effective treatments. And other two topics are Memorandum 1, which is for early protocols or for complex protocols, and what we do is an early contact. The sponsor and the health authority, if it is necessary, we sometimes invite someone from abroad, an expert in the subject matter, and the explanation is shared, as Lada said, about the protocol, why it is happening as it is happening. And in the statistics we see a mathematical complexity that is above us, and of course we do early communications, and once we receive the information, when the information is given to the evaluator, the complexity is going to decline, because sometimes some questions were already asked and it is possible to give an answer. This has been formalized through a memorandum of the regulatory authority. Thanks, Dr. Fernando. I believe we all agree when we say that we visualize Mexico with all this potential in order to become a clinical research hub. And based on what you just said, and after listening to Gabriela, and after listening to Lada, what to you, what is what we are expected to do here in Mexico in order to actually be able to increase the number of clinical protocols, to be able to actually improve clinical research efforts in the country? Because it is clear that we have the conditions to make it happen, but tell me, what do you think we are missing? I would like to answer you in two different sessions, and I believe after listening to Lada and to echo her words, first we have to work in education, in a common understanding, the common notion of the size of the opportunity we have as a country. What I mean by this is that traditionally we see investment in other sectors and in other activities such as manufacturing, and as a more as a noble investment, as an investment that needs to be privileged in Mexico, and a good portion of the growth in Mexico can be explained by the manufacturing sector, such as the automobile sector and some other sectors. This is the explanation, but I believe, and this is something we've been saying, we need to make more progress. We need to speak about education. We need to speak about As I said before, the size of the opportunity when we speak about clinical research, because the research is going to take shorter, the incubation time is going to be shorter. In other words, this is investment that can be brought to Mexico very soon as long as we have the adequate regulatory framework, and there is a multiplying effect, a very important multiplying effect. In many cases, it is above investments in more traditional sectors, so it is important to educate, speaking about the importance of tapping more investment, bringing more investment to Mexico in highly technological sectors and highly innovative sectors, because they will have an economy, in effect in the economy, thinking in terms of the scientists, the level of knowledge shared by them, and other factors. And beyond education, we need to also make progress and the construction of public policies and in a regulatory framework that will facilitate the arrival of this investment in Mexico, a legal framework that will bring certainty, and it will help pharmaceutical companies. And as you saw, we invest a good number of global resources in clinical research so that we can do more for Mexico. And I will give you an example. Out of those 9 billion that we invest globally in clinical trials, in the case of Mexico, we bring an amount that is important for the country, but which is not enough. It is marginal. And this is happening because when we speak about the regulatory framework, there is a process, an approval process of the protocols, of the clinical research protocols in Mexico. And clearly, it is far away from the average benchmark standard that we have at the global level. In Mexico, we go from 90 to up to more than 100 days for the approval of a clinical trial. In a global case, we are coming late because other countries do it in up to 50 days, from 40 to 50 days. So we are being left outside of this opportunity. So there is a big opportunity. There is a lot of work to do. How can we preach? How can we evangelize in this industry? And how important it is to speak more about clinical research and the construction of public policies that will favor this process. Thanks, Fernando. I do not know you, Susana, Lada, and Fer. Do you agree with me? But I believe the term education is globalized, is general, but I believe that more than education, we need to promote in Mexico a coordination, an educational education, and an educational coordination. Education comes from the experts, for the academia, for the enterprise, for the regulatory aspect, and being able to share knowledge. This is what we mean by education precisely. And I am not hesitant that all these trainings with the regulatory agencies, and if we can be more present, and if we can contribute to this ecosystem to be able to innovate as we share knowledge. And this is how we get educated, we share, and we make progress. I believe we have a challenge in Mexico, in Latin America, a global challenge after the pandemic, so that everything lasts longer, and to have many more protocols approved and with more affordable medicines for the population, because this is what we are more interested in, our patients. Is there something you would like to conclude with? We have a couple of more minutes. Would you please, Lada? If I may, Mayra, I fully agree with what you are saying, and this is precisely what I was trying to say with the dialogue platform. In innovation, we are all learning at the same time. How can we share this knowledge in order to make progress with everyone, and to make progress and to be able to multiply? Another aspect that I would like to touch upon is a panel of tomorrow on reliance, and how the different regulators are using reliance in clinical trials. Are regulators that accept the approval by other countries to proceed with the approval in that specific country. It will expedite the process. There are some local aspects of the ethical committees to be assessed, and that's for sure. But at least the evaluation of the safety of the drug is based on the reliance Switzerland. This is one example and worth sharing. To me, this is a very interesting concept that is being used in Latin America, how to work with the different regulators together to share some portions of the evaluation. We have, for example, the Access Consortium, which is Australia, Singapore, Switzerland, Canada, and England. They are working together in order to review the different portions of the trials, and they want to do the same with the clinical trials. So reliance on global sharing. These are two opportunities we can give to regulators so that we can expedite the evaluation process. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Lara. Susana. Yes, what I want to say, and of course I agree with what others have said, but we need to include this topic. It is a productive activity. Clinical research. It is highly regulated. Obviously, we need to focus on the safety of the patients. As we knew during the pandemic, it really actually helped educate and to promote the need for education. It is also important when this is seen as a productive activity. It should be seen as an opportunity, as Fernando said. Institutions that do research are there. It should be a productive activity where we need to harvest, where we need to plant, where we need then to harvest, and time is needed. And in this case, it can be converted quickly, and it can quickly grow, and it will bring economic benefits to the country, and it will bring benefits to our patients, and it will improve the health system. The preparation of the clinical stories, and then the international updates to be done by the researchers. And we also have even the infrastructure to be done in research places. So I believe these are alliances that could be productive for everyone. Thanks, Susana. Fernando? Thanks, Mara. Mayra, I agree with her. And I will add two more things. When we speak about the aspiration of having the patient right at the center, we have a pending assignment when we speak about inclusion of them in these early stages. We traditionally mobilize, and we are in touch with communities of patients when our therapies are in the market, but I believe we have an opportunity to include them in the early process of this research activity. And the second comment has to do with this conversation. And this conversation is seen in this trend that is replacing. For example, we now have social responsibility. We speak about corporate government and social responsibility, and by this I mean the positive aspect, and to be able to bring more research to Mexico, and to be able to accelerate and to be able to reduce the access period for a molecule and for a new treatment for the population. This is something very positive, and this is something we need to speak more of. And of course, there are ethical components, and there are some other attributes, as I said, of this type of investment, speaking about the reduction of the footprint, environmental footprint. So in this search, to find themes that will facilitate the digestion of innovation topics for the population in general terms, and for those who make public policy decisions. There is a sense of urgency that we can speak a common language and to tap this opportunity we have in Mexico, which is huge. South Korea has grown by more than 30% in the last 10 or 15 years, speaking about the millions of investment in investment, but Mexico is below 5%, so this is the size of the opportunity, and I believe we are all working to tap this opportunity. Thanks, Fernando. I believe it's been a very productive session with many points of, with many commonalities at the economic level, at the level of vision and education, what is ahead of us, what we are expected to do. I keep the educational side from the side of the public institution. It resonates at every level, me being in this institution. So I will now thank you for giving us your time, for sharing your information with us, and thanks to Amif. Without further ado, we finish this session and receive my greetings, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
No sé si ya estamos al aire. Administración, ¿ya estamos al aire? Bueno, ok. Agradeciendo a
We thank AMIF for organizing this very important event of the Innovation Week, a contribution of innovation, of pharmaceutical innovation. So we're going to start this panel, Redefining Health and a Comprehensive Vision. Today, April 27th, 2022, the moderator is going to be me, Jose Alarcón Irigoy, Technical Advisor for the Health Commission of the CCE, and we have a panel. We have a high-end panel represented initially by Carlos González Gutiérrez, General Consul of Mexico in San Diego. Would you please raise your hand so that you can see you? Thanks, Carlos González, for being with us, and welcome. Thanks for the invitation. It is our pleasure, and we also have with us Jose Ángel del Nava, researching professor full-time from Guadalajara University de La Jolla, California, USA, and VP Molecular Biology and Biochemistry at the National Center of Biotechnology in Madrid, Spain. Would you please raise your hand, Jose? And last but not least, we have Martín Camargo Fernández, Climb Executive. Good morning from Ecosystem, and welcome Martin. He is a client executive sector, the public sector from Cisco at Cisco Systems. And once this has been said, I will ask each one of the panelists, starting with the Consul Carlos González, to please present his perspective about this central topic, redefining health. A comprehensive vision. We will start with Carlos, and then we're going to listen to Jose Ángel, and then we're gonna close for the time before the Q&A. We're going to close with Martín Camargo Fernández. Consul, would you please? Go ahead. Thanks a lot, Jose. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this panel. I also thank Cristóbal Thompson and Fernando Fon for having the initiative to invite me to this 7th edition of this Innovation Week in Health, organized by AMIF. If I may, very briefly, I would like to introduce myself, and as you said, I am the General Consul of Mexico to San Diego. In San Diego, I am a career diplomat. It's been more than 35 years that I've been working for the Foreign Service, and I celebrate the fact that you have this concern to promote the cross-pollination amongst the different sectors in a way that people like me, who obviously I am not a health professional, but I have had during these 2 difficult years, I have seen challenges and obligations in order to promote health of the communities we serve, and this is how I have approached AMIF, and the fact of being given the opportunity to share our experiences, my experiences. As you know, a consulate is a representation of the Mexican government abroad because of the size of our diaspora. Mexico is a country that has more consulates in other places. It is 50 consular representations of Mexico in the United States, and we also have the Embassy of Mexico in Washington, D.C. What does consuls do? What do consuls do? Our main mandate is to promote rights and interests of Mexican people in our jurisdiction, and more specifically, what we do is 3 types of works. One is fundamental work of documentation. We provide identity documents and trip documents, what we use as Mexicans to be identified and to leave the country. We also help the National Electoral Institute. We give proxies and wills and certificates of birth, and then And then another, we protect, we enforce rights, we visit jails, hospitals, we help with free legal advice to Mexican people in trouble. We also do promotion, we promote the country, we promote its prestige, we promote economic promotion, tourism promotion, so that Mexico can strengthen its position in the world. In these 5 minutes that I still have, what we do in terms of health and how we are related to AMIF. In these last 2 points, protection and promotion. I would not be speaking about documentation, and I would like to specifically share with you 3 actions, 3 main actions that I hope in the Q&A session and in the comment section, if we have time, I would love to expand on many more actions we carry out. But in order to properly use my time, I will be speaking about 3 main actions. The first one is the work of the consulate, what it did during the context of COVID-19, what we did. And this is something that, of course, we were not prepared for. It was the unknown of the unknowns 2 years ago, and as everyone else, we had to improvise. And as you know, in the United States, vaccines were not a problem or stopped being a problem much earlier than in Mexico, and a good portion of our work was to promote consulates. We wanted, first of all, consulates to be the places for people to have the COVID tests performed and then to promote. Consulates were those places where we were able to give the COVID vaccine for free. This San Diego consulate, as other 50 consulates, this is what we were doing during a good time of these 2 years, where we have total and partial closures, even at the border. But I am very, very pleased to report that here in San Diego, this is where we started, and this is where the first time we achieved the transborder vaccine. That was to bring Mexican workers from the maquiladora industry from Tijuana, those who didn't have a tourist visa, we brought them to the U.S. with special permits by the migration authorities to give them the vaccine right at the inspection site and to immediately take them back. We only wanted them to cross the line or the border to be vaccinated, and after that to immediately take them back into Mexico. We did it 2 or 3 months before the arrival of the vaccines to Baja California. We believe that we significantly contributed to the stability of the labor force of the maquila industry at that point in time. And after Tijuana and San Diego, we went to other points of the border, and we followed the same model. And in some places where the transborder vaccines are still being given, and this is how we significantly contributed mainly to the health of nationals on the other side of the border and to the stability of the labor force of this industry, the maquiladora industry. And apart from almost 27 vaccines given to transborder vaccines, we also applied almost 4,300 vaccines and almost 9,000 tests here at the Mexican consulate in our main office, among many other actions during the closing lockdown of the border. And a second activity that I would like to highlight by the network of consulates during the pandemic, we have used a network that was created at the beginning of the 2020, the first health offices or windows located in our different consulates. And the main objective is to help Mexican people, which is to find a medical home to Mexican people, regardless of the migration status. And it has been said that networks are to be built before they are actually needed, and I believe there's no better example than this example of network of health windows. We have 50 in the U.S. territory doing this precisely. They organize fairs of disease prevention, health promotion fairs, and we also help them find these medical homes for Mexican people who do not have a medical insurance. Maybe they are undocumented, and this is why they do not come, they do not approach. So we have a certified application assistant, a professional who is dedicated to help our connationals to navigate the system, the health system, the U.S. health system. Thanks to that, not only through vaccination efforts and the tests, as I described before, but we simply take people to the community clinics and to those places where still today we do COVID tests, and we give vaccines, and this is how we are contributing to the health of communities, to the communities we serve, and those communities that were particularly affected by the COVID. In this county, practically 50% of the people who unfortunately die because of COVID are Mexican people or Latin origin. Most of the people were Mexican. 50% of the people who got infected during the worst time of COVID were Latin people mainly. And I would like to end, if I may, Jose, with the third action that I would like to share with those who are listening to us. It is an evidence of the work we do. We do not only do the documents, the identity documents, as I already told you. We do not only do protection. This is what we do at the health window and what we do when bringing vaccines to our connationals. What we also do, importantly, is that we do promotion activities. And here in San Diego, the industry that is very related to the global economy, and it represents a comparative advantage of this region compared to other regions, is precisely the biotechnology ecosystem. Biotechnology in the southern part of California, in the area of San Diego. I am mainly speaking about San Diego. And since I am also responsible for the economic promotion, this is why, with the support of the Chancellor's Office, we organize a pavilion, the Mexican Pavilion, in the Bio Conference 2022, and I am very grateful to AMIF for the support it has given us in order to make this pavilion a reality. There is a dozen of companies and pharmaceutical companies which are involved in the area of life sciences and biotechnology, and they are doing research work, vanguard research work in order to articulate, to better articulate the Mexican economy, and specifically the biotechnological sector. With the San Diego ecosystem, it will be done from June 13th to the 16th here in San Diego. We will have Bio 2022. 8,000 companies, 6 countries will be present. Will be coming to this biotechnology hub, San Diego, and I hope if you're listening and if you're interested, you can talk to AMIF, and you can also talk to us. You can talk to the consulate, and you can participate in Bio 2022. Thanks a lot, Jose, for this opportunity. Thanks, Consul, and thanks a lot for your clarification, for explaining the work by this network, which is the biggest we have, naturally, because you are our neighbors, and we see Canada. It's so good to see all this presence. And I believe there are several very interesting questions. Thanks a lot, Carlos. And now I will ask Jose Angel Nava to please share his perspective in light of this topic, which is the redefinition of health, a comprehensive vision. Jose Angel, I know that you're going to be sharing your content. Do you have your presentation ready? I believe you have it ready. I believe we can now look at it. Thanks a lot, Jose Angel. And would you please go ahead? We are not listening to you. Are you in mute? Thanks. First of all, I would like to thank for this invitation to the organizers, Fernando Font and Jose, for the moderation of this very important forum. We know the importance and the relevance of these events, of this Innovation Week, and I also would like to thank AMIF, of course. And now I will share my screen, and I only would like you to please confirm you can clearly look at it. Yes, we can look at it. Great. I will focus. I will share my experience speaking about scientific research with an international approach. As the Consul Carlos said, in San Diego, I will be speaking about my experience where I participated for several years. I participated in a research institute in San Diego, California, and I believe it is a very important forum. And I believe it is very important to share the experience during the pandemic of COVID-19. At the beginning of research, and on my side, on the side of Mexico, I started as a research assistant in a Western Biomedical Research Center of IMSS, and I combined this role with teaching in different public and private institutions of the country. And I was always looking for postgraduate national degrees. Those are some of the institutions I had the opportunity to visit, and as you can see there, we can see the Biotechnology National Center, some research institutes of the country, but it was when with the National Center of Biotechnology in Madrid in Spain. This is a center that addresses biotechnology, where I started my research studies abroad, and I developed the master's and the PhD degree, and I started in the year 2010, and then I completed in 2015 my PhD dissertation, and this was the design of a vaccine to prevent COVID-19 coronavirus. Now it is very relevant because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that the epidemic, the acute syndrome caused by SARS-CoV-1 appeared in the year 2002 in China, and it caused a quick dissemination, and it caused 8,000 confirmed cases and a mortality rate of 10%. It is also characterized by fever, pneumonia, and death, just like SARS-CoV-2. Today's pandemic, we're still living. Fortunately, it was controlled in the year 2003. And speaking about my activities at the National Center of Biotechnology, I focus on the studies in order to develop a stable, genetically stable vaccine to prevent this SARS-CoV-2 infection. I was collaborating with two main important experts nationally, Luis Juanes, who lives in Madrid in Spain, and we were also working in Iowa in the United States. Researcher, more than 30 years of experience with coronavirus, and the works and the results are as follows. But one of the relevant points was to have a candidate to protect against this type of viral infections, and it is a base to develop today's vaccines. And as Carlos said, in San Diego, it does research. There are many pharmaceutical companies, research centers, and universities. And this is how I got a PhD position in order to develop an important approach for our country. I wanted to work with dengue because we know how important dengue cases are in Mexico. Dengue cases, but something that happened is that we had the Zika epidemic, so I quickly moved to work with the Zika cases. And in San Diego, we were collaborating with different institutions such as the Texas University, Nueva Jersey, and the Washington University, and even with the Chinese government. So as I told you, that we were working these years with Zika and dengue. public health problems according to the World Health Organization. We know that the virus is transmitted by Aedes mosquito, but 80% of the cases are asymptomatic. In the case of dengue, we have 4 serotypes. In the case of Zika, 2 lineages and strains, and both cause a high incidence and they cause death, but there are no vaccines or antivirals available today, and this is why it is important to study these events to see the importance and the relevance of the pharmaceutical companies. In this case, we also work to design vaccines to fight dengue and Zika. We have published, or I have published, many publications relative to Zika and dengue in different international magazines or journals, the Cell, Science, and Nature journals, and one of the most relevant one was published in the Science journal, where we presented a candidate vaccine to protect from Zika infection based on RNA technology, very similar to the one used to fight COVID-19, like the ones by Pfizer and Moderna. We knew that, for example, in the case of my participation in Spain, I was able to be involved in the work with this virus and the BCL3 biological contagion labs. And then when COVID-19 pandemic came, quickly our institute located in San Diego was working and focused on a very important investment of thousands of dollars to promote the construction of a BCL3 lab in our institute. And these lower photographs show when we were directly working with the virus at the beginning of the pandemic in the year 2020 and at the beginning of the year 2021. And nowadays we're still working with virus SARS-CoV-2. We have been able to publish one of the first papers, for example, the use of nanotechnology in order to fight COVID-19. This was the winner of the best publication in the ACC Nano Journal. We have also published other papers about the importance of immunology in SARS virus, and a very important work in the development of vaccines against COVID-19, where we have made an overview of how COVID-19 vaccines are being elaborated. We were also chosen as a candidate for the Belisario Dominguez Medal by the Mexican Senate because of our international participations to fight COVID-19. And today we are working in several publications, and we speak about the activity against COVID-19 and the genomics of this virus. And thanks, as you know, and as we know, thanks to today's technology, and after the COVID-19, we were able to do many interviews speaking about COVID-19, and we did it internationally, in different international settings, mainly in those forums such as Televisa and Telemundo, Mega Noticias, national and international newspapers, in order to promote vaccination and to answer questions about SARS-CoV-19 or the virus. We have also participated in many publications. We have published in national journals and the National Geographic journals to speak about the myths and what is behind COVID-19 vaccines and relevant information in order to understand today's pandemic. We have also involved in an international research updating process. We have visited the universities. We have participated at the China University, even in Singapore, the Berkeley University, Maryland, and Pasteur Institute, among other relevant institutes. And finally, I would like to finalize my contribution making a summary of what is today's situation of COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccination. We know that there are more than 500 million confirmed cases. Unfortunately, more than 6 million people have passed have died, and it has been controlled, and many deaths have been prevented because of the high number of vaccines. More than 11 billion vaccines given globally. We know that there are more than 100 vaccines being developed. Today we have 12 fully approved vaccines. Something to be mentioned as well as the worldwide vaccination rate is 65% worldwide. We have this year to keep given these vaccines, but we are making progress. And lastly, I would like to finish speaking about the importance of scientific collaboration, national institutions and abroad, and to look for international links with pharmaceutical companies. And this is how we have been working with the Research Institute of San Diego, California, with La Jolla Institute to implement to work with immunological molecular basis and evolutive, and the big challenge in our country. I just came back to Mexico with the Guadalajara University, but looking for financing. It is a constant search. We work with CONACYT, and we would like to be working with some pharmaceutical companies, and this would be it in terms of my participation, Jose, and I really appreciate your invitation. Our pleasure, and we are very proud to know that we have this type of contributions by Mexico with your talent. We would love to ask several questions, but we will leave questions for at the end. And now we will listen to Martín Camargo to then be able to listen to him, and then the questions. Martín, would you please help us with your participation? Would you please check your microphone, because we do not hear you. I'm here. Can I share my screen? The technological aspect is going to be a very good, positive final presentation. I would like you all for the invitation. We're going to be speaking about, I believe I cannot share my presentation. Or can you see my presentation? Yes. Can you see it now? I believe you can see it now. Thanks for this invitation. Maybe you do not all know what Cisco does. It is a communications technology, the biggest communications company in the world. Originally, we were the internet company, and after all these years, many things have happened. I will share the impact in health, the use of these technologies, and by this I mean digital technologies, the use of communications, computing, processing, and in order, I will also tell you what we are looking for. We would like to improve by at least 10 times in whatever we do. If we're going to be using technology, we need to have at least a 10 times improvement, 10 times faster, 10 times more care, 10 times at least. And the great content is to do it by 100 times, but at least 10 times, but we will aim for 100 times. Here we see 4 columns, 4 work areas where digital technology can have an impact. We see taking care of the right holders of the patients, the technology we would like to use, and basically we see 3 major areas: telemedicine and telehealth. It has been developed for a very long time, and the pandemic became a catalyst. Those things that look futurist, unacceptable, far away. How come am I going to be having a teleconference with a physician? It became the day-to-day activity as well as virtual remote care. In other words, having the patient in isolation and allow the patient to be connected to the treatment, to the physician, to the service, to whatever the mean is. It can be a small, a smartphone or a computer or a big unit. The next point that we see is the use of information data in order to do all these processes. So first we have the collaboration between officers and the different health professionals. We always speak about ubiquitous. This is something very important in technology, this concept where you are with what you have available. This is something very important. And if we see the traditional model where we had to go to the hospital, if we had to visit a specialized physician, I had to travel. This is a type of 10 times improvement. We also see data sharing in the cloud. It is not located in a physical place, and this should be a critical mission. It should never fail. And we also see the integration with the devices and the use of artificial intelligence. And here by artificial intelligence, and it is not science fiction, artificial intelligence. This is defined as some different computing model, different from the traditional. The traditional model we've seen is when we have a big number of data, and then we used to apply an algorithm, a way to process those data, and then we got results. This is the traditional approach. And this is what we were used to do. And then artificial intelligence is the other way around. We have results coming from different sources of information. Then we apply procedures, and then we obtain data. In other words, through apparently unrelated information, we can give a meaning, and we can find information that is not evident to the eye. And this is something very important, and this is what we aim to with massive information about patients, crossing of information, diseases, and demographic information. We can see what is the information we can obtain. Another aim, another objective is to transform and to bring operational efficiency. Once again, we're speaking about mobility, mobile clinics, alternative operations, something that was a catalyst. Now we're speaking about the hybrid labor force. This is precisely what we're doing now. In our case, in this hybrid labor force, we can be at the office, we can be out of the office, and we can do things. What matters the most is to continue to things in terms of automation and communications is the DNA of the information we have. And we do not forget that this is happening in a highly regulated context where privacy of the patient prevails. So a conversation we need to have in mind is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, because medical information is very valuable information. Speaking about safety with the different, or security with the different medical devices and with all these data connections we have, and all the different topics. When we are speaking about patients, we have video, we have remote visits, and there is a very relevant privacy aspect. So in order to quickly see my presentation and to summarize, I will tell you that the first thing we see is that health institutions have to consider all the cybersecurity topics. The big price of technology is this at least 10 times improvement. The risk is that in this complicated world, cybersecurity is one consideration. And then it is a great moment. Pandemic showed us that technology, behaviors can be changed, and we can have these 10-time benefits. And we should also consider that when we speak about technology, the continuity of operations is mandatory. We can even have operations that will last more than 12 hours, and we cannot stop an operation for more than 24 hours. Another important aspect we need to consider is that technological infrastructure, technological innovation should come along with thinking about people, adoption processes, and we need to keep in mind all the innovation processes that need to also develop talent. It is not a matter of buying what is newest, what is most expensive, or the most modern things. We need to think in terms of the people who will use it. We need to also remember that communications and that need to be scalable. We can speak about millions of patients, and we need to think and we need to stop having a geographical site with health data. Medical information should exist in an ether in the cloud. And last but not least, I would like to say that in Cisco we have international experience, more than 17,000 global customers who have adopted a portion of these solutions, some of them more advanced, others less, but this is not science fiction. This is something that is actually happening. Thanks, Jose. And it took me 7 minutes. Thanks, Jose. Thanks, Martin, for this presentation. And we need to now close this session on health, which is so important, and sometimes it is the one that brings the opportunities, as you told us, with artificial intelligence, and I believe it's so good, and thank you. Now we have a very complete overview because our consul gave us the regional view. He gave us this very context-oriented view, and then we saw the beginning where everything starts with research, Jose Nava, and now we close with you with something that is an enabler, such as technology is. So I would like to ask the consul, Carlos Gonzalez. Carlos, I know if you look at the region, and now we have the concept of going from global to regional, and what the pandemic has shown, having this diversity for not to depend on only one point. In the region of California, specifically in San Diego, being your focal point, there is it's an important cluster with maquiladores and the technology, and this collaboration, you as strengths of development. And it's good to hear about this bio event that is going to take place in June. How much is it going to be transformed in the years to come of this region and other regions? Juarez, as far as I know, this is a very important aspect for medical devices, the border in the west side of the country. So we would like to hear your vision, even thinking how to integrate the elements of technological development and construction and research and the academia. What is the level of collaboration of these three elements? And I also would like to mention, and at the University of California in San Francisco, as far as I know, there is one whole unit of research with public and private collaboration. So how do you see these trends for the future and this public and private collaboration with a catalyst such as the Consulate of Mexico? Thanks, Jose, for your question. Look, I am pretty optimistic, and maybe this is a professional malformation, diplomats almost. And we need to always be optimistic. This is our responsibility, but I believe in this case it is not an act of faith. It is rather something we see every day here in San Diego. For example, we have in La Jolla Institute of Immunology, we, for example, the photographs presented by Jose Angel, where he worked and he did research. Those are photographs of La Jolla Institute of Immunology. It is Immunology, La Jolla Institute. That is at the vanguard in 29 labs, working on different areas such as biotechnology and health sciences. And our big comparative advantage is a geographical one, on the one hand. But not only that, we have everything to better integrate into that scientific community. We have the Sorrento Valley, which is where La Jolla Institute of Immunology is located. And I am speaking about this institute as an example because recently I had the opportunity to talk to 15 young people. 15 young people, I am sure, with the same history or similar background as Jose Angel's background. They are all very young people, just graduates. They just graduated from Bio UNAM Morelos, the Cuernavaca campus. They studied biotechnology, and some of them just graduated from CICESE here in Ensenada, and they are all part of these networks where young people come to do the professional practice during their last semester. Sometimes they stay here one whole year. I saw this, I have witnessed this because I saw it directly. I saw how these young people don't only come to do their professional practice, but sometimes they are contracted as research assistants or laboratory technician people. And from there, they do more research, they are related, and they eventually continue with the PhD studies. What I am trying to describe to you is something that is very enthusiastic to me, because as today we see 15, those 15 will do their PhD, and then we will have other 15, and of course they will not all come back to Mexico as Jose Angel did. I hope any of them do that, but even if they do not do that, they will be part of these vanguard networks, and we need to be related to those networks. And by we, I mean a very big cocktail of entrepreneurs, of academic institutions, of government agencies. And we should all use biotechnology, and specifically we need to use the geographical closeness, and we need to use the human capital, the key human capital that we already have in this industry, so that we can better relate Mexico to the global economy. Our comparative advantage is not only how close we are to San Diego, despite of the fact it is very, very important, but it is that network of universities which are already educating Mexican professionals who can be in Mexico or in any other country, as long as they are given the minimum sufficient opportunities. Thanks a lot, Carlos, for taking this approach. And I believe that our responsibility is to be optimistic. We're always very, very optimistic and very happy to listen to these successful cases. And I wish you the best for your event or for the event. And I believe that we can clearly ask Jose, since he was in that region, Jose Nava, he was there, but speak about that perspective, Jose, how to promote in Mexico, how to promote having a greater innovative or innovation industry. What are we missing to trigger, as you've seen and as you've done in that region, as the consul said? For example, let's speak about the case of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, one of its main sources of income or revenue is the clinical research. So how can we become a big Puerto Rico? Because we cannot compare in terms of investment. We're much more powerful in terms of investment. So which are your thoughts about this? Would you please, Jose? Yes, I believe this is a very good question. And I believe I could say that, of course, it requires international links, collaboration with those institutions who have a better career, or with those who are at the vanguard internationally. And above all, something that is needed is investment. This is what I would say, investment. This is one of the pillars. Doing research, we know that scientific research is very important for health. And what is clear is that the strengthening of public health, it is vitally important. And I also believe that last but not least, or at the end, the two reasons why, the two things is to look for more collaboration, investment, and motivation. And as Carlos said in his presentation, I believe there are many enthusiastic young people in the country, and I believe we need to we need to do some promotion and give support, and this support should be given from the public and private institutions so that young people can have this endorsement back up in order to promote research, and we want them to know that they can make progress abroad, and if they decide to be back to Mexico, they should be given the support. Thanks, Jose. I believe it is very, very clear. Support will never be enough. The more support, the more we can do with it, and to believe in ourselves, to believe it is possible to do things, to believe that we can contribute, as you gave as very clear examples, and now the role of technology. And I will now switch to Martin. Thanks, Jose. Martin. Consider all the technological aspects you mentioned. As far as I know, there is a regulation being discussed at the Senate. It is a bill on digital health, telehealth. This is a bill being discussed, and now, after the pandemic, even WhatsApp to talk to your physician, and more sophisticated things. How fast you believe this regulatory framework is going to help us promote this? Do you see it more as an inhibitor? In other words, how much can we expect? Look, I believe the regulatory framework should be seen as an enabler. It will not be a perfect enabler at the beginning, and it will not necessarily be 100% completed framework, but it will bring certainty. It is going to be a framework of certainty to then proceed with the adjustments. The regulatory framework will help. Using it initially will help. And to be willing to correct what happens. For example, we can think in terms of telemedicine, we can think in terms of health, and in a specific situation, once you build it, in every country, it will present very specific situations. But it does help, that's for sure. It is always to work with a regulated framework instead of playing by ear. It is a network of protection for all these unexpected things that could happen. At the end of the day, it is a guideline for those who produce these solutions. The regulatory framework, it is very important to use it when we work in the health field. It is much better to have a regulatory framework instead of not having any. Thank you very much. Thanks, Martin. Now, I would like to, once we have spoken about this, and once we have spoken about the framework of certainty, and I fully agree with you, Martin, and I was very pleased to know that Cisco is trying to improve by 10 times, at least initially, and what you said about taking care. You were very, very clear when you spoke about the results and how artificial intelligence will not initially use data. It will first use the results to then be able to give data. It is a very clear situation. So because of time, we're going to have a second round, and we will start with Carlos. And Carlos, I would like to listen to you. This network of 50 consulates and having this international commitment as a MIF showed, and the objectives of sustainable development in the United Nations, at what extent are you having this as a framework in order to promote development ahead of us? Would it be a framework that will be useful? What is the stance? What is the position? What is the progress? At what extent are we collaborating with the United Nations? In Mexico, there are more or less 25 United Nations offices. We have the different offices. So at the consulate in the United States, do you see the synergies through the 2030 sustainable development objectives, and how can we potentialize and how can we align all these efforts to see all this globally? What is your global perspective? Thanks, Jose. Thank you very much. And first, I would like to add to your question about the regulatory framework. I would like to briefly add and to say that I belong to the federal government. We belong to the Chancellor's office and to the Foreign Service federal government. And the truth is that we have, first of all, we need to see bio and the participation of the Mexico's pavilion and the bio conference. And this is just one example, but there are many more pavilions, and it is an opportunity to strengthen this cocktail among academicians, entrepreneurs, and government officers, because we are a country that has a clear need to design a regulatory regime that is going to be competitive, that will be able to compete against other countries in the world. And this is where we need to do it in a context where there is a very close collaboration between the academic sector, the entrepreneurs, and the government officers who are in charge of designing this regulatory framework. Here, if we work in isolation, it will be useless. It should be a collaboration effort. Like the objective of this industry, biotechnology, what this is all about is to bring to Mexico processes or portions of the manufacturing processes, test processes, the progress produced in other countries, so that we can improve Mexico's position and to better participate in the supply chains and to bring vaccines so that they can be produced in Mexico. We need to make sure we have a regulatory competitive framework compared to the one of other countries. And now, speaking about the challenge and the sustainable development and the work by the consulates, I believe we play a very important role. Mexico has the advantage of not only having diplomatic representations or missions in most of the countries in the world, in the biggest countries with which we have a close relationship, but Mexico also has a network of consular representation offices in subnational governments. And for us, it is much more important than in terms of 80% of other countries in the world, speaking about linking efforts. And by this, I mean California and Texas, for example, which undoubtedly are our main trade partners, not in the United States, but in the world. California is the fifth global economy. California is at the vanguard in legislation terms, speaking about climate change. And as of the year 2006, they amended their laws in order to facilitate clean energies. And again, we are the main trade partner. We are close to California, and this is the model we need to be related to so that we can promote our own clean energies and to do synergy and to be even closer to the Californian economy. Thanks, Carlos. And I take that as an excellent final thought. And now I am trying to do the same with Jose and with Martin. Jose, would you please give us a final thought in 1 minute? Please tell us, how are we doing in Mexico? How are we doing with respect to our vaccine, Patria? Is there a signal of another Mexican vaccine? One final 1 minute comment. Would you please, Jose? Yes, Patria vaccine is still in the 2 clinical stage. Volunteers are being recruited, and they're doing studies to prove the efficacy and the safety of it, and this vaccine is under development as well as other national vaccines or other vaccines nationwide. I would like to say, though, speaking about COVID-19 pandemic, and this pandemic has clearly told us the need for the importance of health and to invest in it. And cost of treatment of different medical conditions or diseases can be more expensive than investing in public health. A very clear example is that indirectly we will not have medical disabilities of different workers as we saw during the pandemic. So I do believe an awareness is being created to improve health in the different settings, but of course, speaking about scientific research, which is a main line of business, the strengthening of health. This comes from research. Our clear example is the development of vaccines against COVID-19, the new treatment, new monoclonal antibodies, new antivirals, and I would like to conclude by saying that investing in resources, in health resources, it is not an expense, it is an investment, and to improve quality of life of our population and of our society. And the phrase that I would like to close, that I like to use to close, is that the protection of world population against SARS-CoV-2 virus, the cause of this pandemic, wouldn't be possible without the international collaboration, the protection. So we are working jointly and we have international investments. Thanks again, Jose, for this invitation. Thanks to you and thanks for this thought. Because, of course, multidiscipline collaboration and this global view is very important, is fundamental, crucial. Thanks a lot. Carlos, now we have to close this session. Marty, would you please tell us, on behalf of SICO and as part of a 1 minute final thought, would you please share with us an example or a case of success that could be relevant or something that is actually taking place now, currently taking place? Thanks. I can share with you one case, a very quick experience. This is the end of my participation. At the beginning of the pandemic at the National Institute of Respiratory Diseases, evidently because of the volume of care needed and because of the lack of knowledge, very complicated settings of people ill, families, saturated hotel, but we quickly implemented remote care of patients. We quickly implemented it, and through technologies, patients were able to, the families were able to talk to the people at the hospital. We wanted to promote the sensation, the feeling of being together without the saturation of the hospital, without distracting health professionals, and we were able to implement this in 2 weeks. And this is the type of example that brought us 10 times more those who have relatives at the hospital. And they didn't know how your patients were doing. You were not able to talk to them. So I would say this is an actual case as an evidence of what is possible, and I will end with 2 ideas. One idea that belongs to me, and one idea that I would like to take from my collaborators in the first panel. This is the right moment to start. There is no better moment. We have the spirit of this moment when we want to see things and prove things, and what I have heard many times is collaboration. So this is the right moment to do it, and there's no need to be in isolation. There's a way to collaborate, the academia, the institutions. We also have the entrepreneurial side, and this is the right moment to do it. And as a comment consul, I am very proud, and I visited San Diego to do business, and what you can feel there is great. I have always said that San Diego is the vision of the world that is yet to come, and it was pretty nice to see all the support infrastructure we get from the federal government. Thanks, Martin. But very kind of you. Thanks all, collaboration, network, the elimination of myths. And this is the end. This is how we close. Thanks a lot to everyone. Thanks a MIF for this opportunity.
Gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy.
we saw two fundamental pillars of a myth: clinical research, the potential to bring investment to transfer knowledge and technology, but above all, the opportunity to give early access to patients. The potential of Mexico to become a clinical research hub, it is huge. We need to work more to have a common understanding of this opportunity. Another fundamental role is the role of cross-pollination and innovation and the transformation power, speaking about health technologies. And last but not least, we spoke about the urgent need to support the innovative aspect, and we want to have a change and a better future. This is what promotes action, and this is what transforms what we mean by innovation. Thanks to all the panelists and moderators who were with us today. Thanks to you all who connected to be with us, and tomorrow we're going to have our last and third day of sessions, and we're going to be speaking about two crucial points: regulatory aspects and the industrial property. And it is not only important for our industry, it is important for the future of innovation in health. We wait for you tomorrow.